All right, let's get started. It's 4 o'clock, Thursday, August 19th. Let me just tell you, we are so thrilled to have all of you here supporting us today. Just real briefly, if I can, I just want to run through a few of our team members that are here on the call with us today and just let you know who's representing you here at Los Angeles Normal. Of course, we're led by the very famous Bruce Margolin. Of course, I'm also here involved as the Deputy Director. We have Elizabeth Mack, our Director of Health and Wellness, Nicholas Castelli, our Director of Communications, Hirsch Jane, Director of Government Affairs, Sharon Sperber, Director of Memberships, Brett Mackhomer, our Director of Technology, and behind all these people, we have another great group of people who are all supporting us here at Los Angeles Normal. So we're just thrilled to have you here today and receive all of the love and support from our community. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. We have an exciting program featuring Elizabeth Mack, who in addition to being our Director of Health and Wellness, she's also a registered nurse with extensive experience in holistic caring. Elizabeth is going to be sharing her CBD knowledge with us, and she'll spend a few minutes discussing CBD products from today's meeting sponsor, Alento, who is committed to normalizing healthy cannabis use by offering effective, approachable, and high-quality products. Hey, Brad, I think I'm doing a screen share, but I didn't mean to do that. So I don't know if you're able to set that off. Cool. Okay. So as well, today we're going to be hearing from Hirsch Jane, our Director of Government Affairs, and he's going to be discussing the upcoming California Assembly Bill 228, which is currently making its way through the legislative process. AB 228 would create a regulatory framework, if you don't know what it is, creating a regulatory framework for industrial hemp products as defined in food, beverages, and cosmetic products. This is going to be a very informative talk with Hirsch. He's extensively knowledgeable. And AB 228 is something that can really help push this cannabis industry forward. So very much looking forward to hearing from Hirsch there. And before we begin this exciting program of education here today, I'd like to give you a few updates on Normal's mission of reforming marijuana laws at the local city level, the County of Los Angeles, the state of California, as well as the reform being pushed at the federal level. Let me start right here in LA. Locally, here in West Hollywood, this past Monday evening, the city council was considering a smoking ban in multi-unit housing. Los Angeles Normal, along with other important activist groups, rallied consumers, businesses, and the residents of West Hollywood to call into the council meeting and express their concerns to the council members that state-approved cannabis would be included in this ban. So we're proud to report that the council wisely decided to separate cannabis from tobacco products in their ban with a 3-2 vote. As well, and very, very importantly, the council decided that they would not differentiate between medical cannabis and recreational cannabis. This is important because the reality of the situation today is that many, many medical patients have let their prescriptions lapse given the vibrant retail market. So we can't count on everybody having an appropriate prescription. So anyway, that's great news at the local level. We were quite thrilled with that. At the state level, Los Angeles Normal supporting California Normal and Assembly Bill 228. And as I mentioned, Hirsch is going to be speaking about this in more detail, so I'm going to leave that up to him because he knows far more than I do. And then at the national level, I really would love to draw your attention to something that's very, very important. Los Angeles Normal is generating local support for the MORE Act. The MORE Act is the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act. It simply can't be overstated that the passing of the MORE Act would be one of the most substantial pieces of cannabis legislation that we've ever seen yet in this country. So what is the MORE Act? Well, it's bipartisan legislation that removes marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, thus decriminalizing the substance at the federal level and enabling states to set their own policies. It's absolutely critical. The MORE Act would also make several other important changes. For example, it permits for physicians affiliated with the Veterans Administration to make medical marijuana recommendations to qualifying veterans who reside in legal states. And it incentivizes states to move ahead with expungement policies that will end the stigma and the lost opportunities suffered by those with past low-level cannabis convictions. If approved, the MORE Act also allows the Small Business Administration to support entrepreneurs and businesses as they seek to gain a foothold in this emerging industry. So I just can't overstate how important of a change the MORE Act would be if that does pass. So please do visit our website at lanormal.org to see how you can support these efforts. As one of the oldest chapters in the country and a completely volunteer organization, Los Angeles Normal is growing our membership base, and we would love to have your personal support. Please do consider joining us as a dues-paying member and know that your funds go towards pushing forward on reforming cannabis laws within Los Angeles and beyond, as I just discussed a moment ago. So at the moment, Sharon is putting in a link into the chat window where you can sign up to give us your support, and we would really, really appreciate that. As well, let's see. Paid members are going to be receiving special updates and offerings beyond what we send out in our monthly newsletter. Los Angeles Normal is a 501c3 nonprofit entity, and we are charged with providing educational content to our community. So please consider joining us and lending your financial support to these efforts, or actually come join us and put your energy into help trying to change these laws, like this great group of volunteers we have here now. Without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Elizabeth Mack and let her begin her portion of the program. And honestly, just thank you all for being here, and thank you for your support. Elizabeth.
Hey, Ian. Hey, Brett, can you allow me to share my screen? Let's see. All right, cool. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, so today, as advertised, we are going to be talking about CBD and chronic pain. Anybody here have chronic pain? We all have. Anybody that's as old as me definitely has it. So, and this is part of our series called the Medical Minutes. One of the things I like to talk about is the medicalization and how to make clinical cannabis, hip again. So. Let me advance this slide. So the first thing we need to talk about is what is pain. So when we talk about pain, mainly we're talking about different levels of acute, chronic, and that sort of things. And from a clinician standpoint, we like to figure out what kind of pain it is first, and that's how we treat it. But an overview of pain, it's not a bad thing. It's definitely a sign that something is wrong in the body. And so acute pain can be either a symptom, something like neuropathy, where there's something wrong in the body and that's getting your attention. It can also be a cause, like migraine is going to cause you to have pain. And acute pain is generally sudden, so it resolves pretty quickly, and we think about broken bones, burns, scrapes, injuries, surgery, dental work, things like that. And then chronic pain is the aftermath of injuries that we've had for weeks, months, or even years. And most people think about arthritis, nerve pain, headaches, fibromyalgia, years from sports. So these are the things that stack up. And we need to address both kinds because pain creates stress on the body, on the mind, the spirit, and it limits functioning. When we're in pain, we're not productive, we're not happy, we're not contributing members of society. So it's really important to address pain. So going back to the types of chronic pain, which is really what we're kind of focused on here today, headaches. So headaches can come from migraines, tension headaches. They can come from tumors. So if you have a sudden headache that starts worsening and it doesn't go away, you got to get that inspected to see if there's anything wrong. But ideally, those are something that are temporary. Back and neck pain, this is something that people generally deal with all the time. This doesn't go away. So this is something that we have to manage, again, for quality of life and productivity. Osteoarthritis, stenosis, degenerative disc disease, and older people, they'll say that they've got bone-on-bone pain. Muscle pain can come from overuse, tension, poor posture. We're sitting all the time. You got to get up and take a break every hour. And just overall tightness, which also can come from stress. Fibromyalgia is very commonly diagnosed, but not really well understood. We don't really know why it happens. It's got an unknown etiology or origin, and it can be widespread through the body. So it's not just one certain spot. You can have trigger points all over the place. And then ladies can have pelvic pain, endometriosis, cramps, fibroids, urinary tract infections, and then abdominal pain. things sort of like IBS, Crohn's, appendicitis, pancreatitis, kidney stones, pardon the helicopters. But abdominal pain can be quite a problem in itself. And then cancer pain, tumors cause pain themselves. They can press on nerves and they can just cause a lot of weight in different areas of the body. And then it can also be from treatment itself, such as radiation, very toxic chemotherapy can also cause constant pain. And so what are we doing in America to treat the pain epidemic? We've created an opioid epidemic. We've had, up to 130 people die every day in America from opioid overdoses. 47,000 people are overdosing almost on an annual basis. 81,000 using heroin for the first time. So, it's a problem. And what they've done is now they're not giving opiates. So many people that come to me in my practice say, they used to take 8 oxycodone a day and now they can't get any. And what are they going to do? So most people turn to the over-the-counter medications. And so when we think about Motrin, Aleve, which is basically ibuprofen or naproxen, what do we get for that? We get gastrointestinal bleeding, GI bleeding, ulcers, stomach bleeding, heartburn, tinnitus, ringings in the ear, headaches, directly cause headaches, dizziness, liver and kidney problems, leg swelling, high blood pressure, heart attack, heart failure, stroke, and death. So, if you take 1 or 2 a day, most people think that's no big deal. But what about CBD, CBDA? The raw acidic form of CBD is also a COX-2 inhibitor, just like these anti-inflammatories. So just like the NSAIDs, CBDA may actually be a better anti-inflammatory, and it's not going to cause any of those side effects. So when we have medical cannabis laws in legal states like California, we see a dramatic reduction in the prescription pharmaceuticals that are prescribed by doctors in that state. We also see less pharmaceuticals for anxiety, nausea, psychosis, seizures, sleep, depression, and many other things. And then we can also see a dose-by-dose reduction of opioids in those medical cannabis states. And there's protocols that several clinicians follow. But essentially, if we start with somebody on a 1-to-1 CBD THC ratio, even low doses of 2.5 milligrams, 2.5 milligrams, or 5 milligrams, 5 milligrams a couple times a day, we can absolutely start to retract 1 or 2 doses of those opioids per day, per month or per week, depending on how this person's doing and how much they're taking and how long they've been taking it, obviously. But cannabis doesn't only treat the pain itself, but with opioid withdrawal, things like nausea, sweating, cramps, anxiety, insomnia, tremors, all of those can also be alleviated by this sacred plant. So cannabis is such an amazing plant. It can do all of those things. To recap cannabis, I like to just point out that we've used this for 5,000 years in human history, at least. That's just recorded written history. It's been used probably before that. And then there's 500 natural compounds. It's one of the richest medicines on earth in its structure. And it's composed of cannabinoids like CBD, THC, terpenes, and flavonoids. So all of this is the medicine, which is found in the trichomes, or this thick purple sticky stalk in the middle. And those trichomes are very influenced by the strain that it is, the soil, the climates, and the cultivation techniques. There's a word I like to use just because it's a fun word, pleiotropic, and it affects many physiologies simultaneously. So one of the things I love so much about cannabis is that it has very effective efficiency. In other words, somebody that has cancer could be taking something for nausea and vomiting, something for pain, something for anxiety, something for insomnia, something for appetite, or they could take a 1-to-1 oil, right? It's that workhorse of cannabinoids giving us very effective efficiency. And I also like to talk about cannabinoids as health promotion, where you can use this, a puff off a vape, now you can take a walk because it doesn't hurt so much. So that's what's going to help you heal, is that movement. Cannabis works because we have an endocannabinoid system. So this was discovered back in 1992 and earlier, but that's when they actually found and put it all together, that there are locks, keys, and endocannabinoids and enzymes that break it down. And we've got more of these CB1 and CB2 receptors, those are the cannabinoid receptors,
Where'd you go?
in our body than any other receptor. And what this does is it provides the homeostasis at the cellular level. And we can fall deficient, but THC coincidentally mimics anandamide and 2-AG, our two endocannabinoids, to activate these receptors and bring us back to cellular balance. CBD itself is very neuroprotective. It's anti-inflammatory, as I mentioned, and it can fine-tune the body in many different ways to activate serotonin, which will then calm anxiety, pain, and improve sleep, which also helps pain. You've got to be sleeping really, really well. And overall, CBD helps on a neuroprotective and an immune basis. And, you know, if we're to sew up all of these other physiological systems, the ECS basically rides on top and provides that fine tuning at each one. So your nervous system, your GI system, your cardiovascular system, cannabinoids are the fine tuning. So all of the systems are modulated by these little endocannabinoids that make everything work well. So a recap on what CBD does on the body: it activates this ECS to bring us back to balance. CBD promotes anandamide, our own endocannabinoids, to be in more of a supply because it inhibits the enzyme that breaks it down. And it will reduce the inflammation. So joints and muscles, which is our pain signaling, but also our brain and our gut, loaded with the endocannabinoids, and CBD can activate those. It'll quiet the nerve distress, soothing neuropathy, central pain, trigeminal neuralgia, and things like that, and support a healthy stress response. Many of us get in fight or flight all the time. Our HPA axis is alert, and we want to quiet that. And CBD can do so, as well as to activate serotonin and dopamine, both. To give you a better mood and a little bit more motivation to stay well and healthy. And then in our immune response, so our immune system has to either rev up or cool down, and the ECS again provides that fine tuning to make sure that we function in our best way. We can run deficient, and just like anything else, we can supplement, right? So when we supplement with CBD, we can boost this overall health of the ECS, which then in turn supports the well function of our other systems. And CBD is generally not always good enough. Sometimes we need microdoses of THC. A little bit of THC will activate that CBD and help it work even better. But you don't need that much. The real workhorse in clinical pain management is the CBD. So just to recap CBD for chronic pain, it is effective, safe, and broad applications for medicine, as well as overall wellness. It's safe at low doses for all people, kids, adults, seniors. 10 to 50 milligrams is generally effective dosing. And split dosing is really more beneficial than just once a day. So if you're going to take 10 milligrams of CBD twice a day with a meal, breakfast and dinner, that's probably going to be your best bet. Make sure it's lab tested, that you have a certificate of analysis proving the potency and the purity. And if you can get a company that's got a QR code on that, that goes back to that batch testing, that's always the best way to go, so that you know. And then there's a couple of different types of CBD. So when you're out shopping, if you want cannabis CBD, which has greater than 0.3% THC, that's going to be found in our California dispensaries. Hemp CBD, or a full spectrum CBD, is going to have less than 0.3% THC, and you're going to find that online and in health stores. Broad spectrum CBD, this or an isolate, is going to have no THC. So for folks that are out there that are going to have any drug testings or worry about that, because if you're a cop or a firefighter or a healthcare worker, you can't have any of that. And then when we talk about what's the best value, what's the best CBD, it's always going to be the one that works, right? So I'm not beholden to any of these, but I myself take a good cannabis CBD. So my company we do cannabis coaching, and everything is on the website. If you want to be in touch, you can email me at info@holisticcaring, or just visit the website. And I will now pull up hold on, let me see if John is here. So John, are you here to talk about Alento Relief?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, yes. So I'm going to introduce John Rhodes, and I spoke a couple times, and he is with Alento, which is one of our mission partners. And I wanted to talk about how Alento is solving the problem and bridging the gap of health and wholeness for CBD and chronic pain. So with no further ado, John, tell us about your medicines.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Great presentation. Always appreciate getting good scientific information on what is in cannabis and how it can help people. So I want to also start out by thanking the group. I mean, NORML's mission right now is more important than it's ever been. It's more relevant than it's ever been. I'm really happy to be a part of what NORML is doing, and look forward to getting more involved and helping with content and helping to educate NORML members and broader populace about how they can use cannabis for wellness. So if you can go to the next slide, please. What we're trying to do with Alento is to reduce the social stigma so that people can access the wellness benefits of cannabis. I think we all realize that there's a whole lot of people who could be benefiting from cannabis use and aren't doing it, either because they don't have the knowledge or because of the result of propaganda that has created a social stigma against them being able to use it. These are two really critical points, even in addition to the legal restrictions that NORML is really supporting to remove right now. As part of this, the company is totally behind supporting people who've been unjustly impacted by cannabis prohibition. And also, we're doing a lot of work to support access to cannabis. And that's mostly through education and advocacy. But ultimately, we see our responsibility to be an ambassador for cannabis to the broader population. I hope all of you see your responsibility as ambassadors also, and feel as good as I do when I could bring knowledge to people and bring cannabis to people who can really benefit from it, and often are using it to offset other much more harmful substances or activities. So if you can advance. The foundation of what we're bringing to market also is for consumers who see THC euphoria as a side effect. Now, I'm going to assume that most of the people on this call, including me, don't mind getting a little euphoric every once in a while in the right context. The however in that is if you're managing a pain condition or a chronic pain condition, you probably see the THC euphoria as an unwanted side effect. The products that we've designed, I don't have an image in this presentation, but our relief mints have been designed CBD dominant, 2.5 milligrams THC, intended to be at a level where people will not be impaired by taking one of these during the day to manage a chronic pain condition. I also want to talk about how unique pain is. So pain is a huge problem for a lot of people, and from our own research and from studies that have been done more broadly, is the main reason that people come into cannabis. So pain, sleep, and anxiety are the big three. Right now, with what's going on in the world more broadly, all of those things should be top of mind, and cannabis should be top of mind for a much broader portion of the population than it currently is. So with that, I am excited to be here. I hope I could be a part of this, both through my advocacy and NORML, and also by bringing Alento to more people. I love having the opportunity to educate hopefully you jotted down my email address. We'll check out our product website, alentorelief.com. Starting to blog about how you can also be an educator and an advocate for people to come into cannabis and help them to achieve a greater level of wellness. So thanks again. I'll pass it back to Ian and Elizabeth.
I think my video has been stopped. Oh, there we go. There we go. Hey, John, thank you so much for coming in and showing us your support. Elizabeth, always thank you so much. Hey, I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Hirsch Jane next. Brett, if you can go ahead and activate Hirsch's camera. And Hirsch, please do give us a brief introduction of who you are beyond being our Director of Government Affairs, and tell us what you got going on.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Hey, everyone. My name is Hirsch Jane, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs at NORML. I'm also the Director of Government Affairs at Caliva, which is a cannabis company based in San Jose. We have both a cannabis business and a nascent hemp CBD business, and I'm really excited to talk to you today a little bit more about hemp CBD. I think both John and Liz, did a really excellent job articulating what the benefits of hemp CBD are and can be. What I'm hoping to do today is just talk about a piece of legislation that is going to try and build a legislative and regulatory framework around hemp CBD so that consumers in California can get access to safe, tested hemp CBD products. And what I'm going to do is actually just pretty simple. I think maybe 3 or 4 things. So the first thing I'm going to do is just provide some context, like why are we talking about this legislation? What is the state of play today? So that's the first thing, just context. The second thing is talking about why this matters, like why this should matter to you as a Californian, regardless of whether you have a hemp CBD business, that this legislation will pass. So that's number 2. Number 3, I'll walk you through the specifics of the legislation, like what are the different pieces of it. And the fourth thing I'll do is just talk through next steps, like what can we expect to see going forward. So again, pretty easy, just those 4 things, like number 1, what is the context? Number 2, why should you care? Why does this matter to you? Number 3, what does this bill that we're talking about, AB 228, do? And number 4, what can we expect to see in the coming weeks and in the coming months? So with that, we'll just get started with that first piece, which is what is the context? I think the good place to start is the 2018 Farm Bill. And so many of you may know this, but while cannabis remains illegal under federal law, hemp was legalized federally by the 2018 Farm Bill. And so that Farm Bill that passed in December 2018 basically removed hemp from Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, right? So cannabis is still considered a Schedule 1 drug, but hemp is not. In other words, hemp is now federally legal. And so hemp can be used to make, commercial and industrial products like rope, textiles, clothing, shoes, paper, etc. It's been used that way for a long time. So the good news is that hemp is legal. Now, the challenge is, the FDA has not yet put out rules regarding hemp CBD. So there's something called the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. And what that basically means is like it's illegal to sell an active ingredient in an FDA approved drug outside of prescription drug channels. And one thing that you all may know, because of the enormous promise of CBD, it now exists as an active ingredient in a drug. That drug is called Epidiolex. That's a drug that's used to treat epilepsy in small children. And some of you may have heard of this drug before. It was started by a company called GW Pharma. If you haven't heard of it, I urge you to look into it a little bit more because the treatments for seizures used to be horrible, used to come with all sorts of terrible side effects. But then this drug was approved and now it's used to deal with seizures, and it's far more effective than other drugs that are out there. I mention that all because I think that really speaks to the sort of therapeutic promise that CBD has, which is something that Liz was sort of touching on. So the good news is that we have this medicine. Now, the challenge, as I mentioned before, is that the FDA generally says it's illegal to sell an active ingredient that is part of an FDA approved drug. And so this is an FDA approved drug. And so the FDA has basically acknowledged that like, hey, CBD has a lot of promise, but it's part of an FDA approved drug. So we have to figure out some way, we have to build some sort of a regulatory structure that allows CBD products to be sold. And so basically for the past year and a half, right, shortly after the 2018 Farm Bill passed, the FDA has been in the process of developing formal rules about how hemp CBD can be used in foods and beverages and dietary supplements. And so I think the takeaway there is the FDA has been working on this for a year and a half. They haven't yet come up with rules. And so technically, it is federally illegal to add hemp CBD to food and beverage products. And so what is sort of interesting is that the FDA hasn't come up with any of these rules, and yet it doesn't really sort of enforce against hemp CBD products, right? That's why you can go to sort of Walgreens and other retailers and purchase hemp CBD goods. And so I mention all this because, you know, hemp CBD has now come to resemble a place similar to cannabis, where something is technically federally illegal, but the federal government really doesn't enforce it. And because there's such strong consumer demand for this substance, the states are starting to fill in the gaps, right? Again, this is just like cannabis, where because of federal inactions, states are starting to pass their own rules. And as we all know, there are 33 states that have legalized cannabis for some medical reason and 11 for adult use. And so you're now starting to see states take that same action on hemp CBD. So over the past 6 months, you've seen states like Texas, states like Louisiana, states like Illinois, starting to finally pass regulations that will allow hemp CBD to be added as a food and beverage additive. And so just to kind of conclude there what the context is there's a ton of promise that CBD has. There's a ton of demand for hemp CBD products. The FDA hasn't gotten its act together yet. So a bunch of states are starting to build their own regulatory structures around how these goods can be sold. So that's kind of where we are right now. That's the context. Now, the second piece of this is talking about what California is going to do or not do. So as all of these other states have passed their own hemp CBD regulations, California has been thinking about it for a year and a half, but it hasn't yet taken action. Now, why should you care about that? I think you should care about it for a few reasons. One, you know, John and Elizabeth were just articulating all of the benefits that CBD products can provide, but because CBD products there isn't a regulatory structure that exists in the state right now. You know, there are some great CBD companies out there, but there are some companies out there that, you know, sort of are selling products that don't contain their advertised level of CBD, right? Or don't, you know, aren't testing for microbials and pesticides and other such things. So the reason that you should care that California hasn't yet passed legislation is that you as a consumer may want to obtain the benefits of CBD products. And, you know, just like you in any other context would, you as a consumer deserve to be able to, when purchasing a product, know that it's been tested, right? And that it contains as much CBD as they say it should. So that's one reason why it should matter. You know, you as a consumer should want access to regulated products. I would say a second reason that this really matters is, as many of us know, we're currently in the midst of a deep economic crisis. And, you know, hemp CBD in California would be one of the few sources of new revenue, right? The state of California is about to run a $60 billion annual budget deficit. And there's not a lot of new industries, right, that just sort of just pop up overnight. Hemp CBD is one of the few sources of potential new revenue. And so although California hasn't passed legislation yet, there's an enormous amount of interest in passing legislation because that would help mitigate the budget deficit. So again, the context so far is hemp is legal. The FDA hasn't come up with any rules yet. All of these other states are starting to take action. California hasn't yet. And that's, you know, not good for you as a consumer, and that's not good for citizens of California. The last thing that I will say is that California has been a leader on cannabis issues. So I think those of us who care about cannabis and care about plant-based medicines, we should look around and ask ourselves why California hasn't taken action yet, or we should not be pleased about that. So, you know, today California is one of 7 states that is considered to have extremely strict hemp CBD laws because it hasn't yet passed this legislation. So those are all the reasons why you know, we should want California to pass this bill. The third thing that I'm going to talk through is like, okay, what is California doing about this? So the good news is that there's a piece of legislation that stands a very good chance of passing by the end of the legislative session that would build a legal and regulatory framework around hemp CBD. And this bill is Assembly Bill 228. As many of you know, the California legislative session ends at the end of this month, August 31st. So we have about 12 days to get this bill passed, which is something that a lot of us are working pretty hard on. And this bill, AB 228, it would do a lot of things, but I'll just highlight a few of them. The first thing that it would do is it would finally legalize hemp CBD as a food additive, right? So that would mean that hemp CBD can be added to food, can be added to beverages, and there would be a clear regulatory framework for doing that. So it would finally legalize this activity. So that what this would mean is that major retailers across the state of California would be able to carry hemp CBD products with confidence. And that would really lead to just a dramatic explosion in the market when you see major retailers being able to carry this on their shelves. A lot of them are reluctant to do so now, again, because the FDA hasn't put out rules. The second thing that this product would do is that it would allow dispensaries to sell hemp CBD products, right? So currently, cannabis dispensaries in California can only sell cannabis products. They can't sell hemp CBD products. What this piece of legislation would do is that it would allow a dispensary that sells psychoactive cannabis products to also sell hemp CBD products. And so for those of us that work in the cannabis industry, this is really helpful because it would open up a new revenue stream for all of these dispensaries. So there are other things that the legislation does, but I think the two main things are like, hey, this is now legal. We have a legal and regulatory framework around this. And two, it can now be sold in dispensaries. So those are the two main things that the legislation would achieve. Before I talk about its prospects going forward, I also just want to highlight, sort of some tensions between, folks that are trying to push the bill forward and other people who are less enthusiastic about it. So there are some people, I'm one of them, that really would welcome this legislation. I think it'll be good for consumers, as I mentioned, and would open up new revenue streams for dispensaries. But there are other folks who work in the cannabis industry who are less enthusiastic about the bill, right? So some folks who work in the cannabis space feel that consumers will start to purchase hemp CBD products at the expense of cannabis products. Or if I can get a hemp CBD product at a major retailer, I'd be less likely to patronize a dispensary and purchase what I would purchase there. There are other folks that feel that hemp CBD products should be held to the same testing standards as cannabis, which, as many of us know, are incredibly, rigorous and difficult to meet. We test cannabis more rigorously than we test our food in California. There are still others that feel that hemp CBD products should be subject to the same track and trace system as California's cannabis products are. So I highlight that to say that I think there's a very strong economic and public health case for passing this legislation. And in a second, I'll talk through its prospects. But I wanted to mention that it's interesting how this piece of legislation can also create cleavages within the cannabis community, because some people might view hemp CBD products as a threat to their cannabis sales. Now, I don't think that threat is well founded, but I think it's interesting to think that tension exists. Now, what are the prospects of the legislation? As I mentioned, the end of the legislative session is August 31st, right? So by August 31st, the California legislature has to pass bills, and that's essentially the deadline. And then once that legislation is passed, then Governor Newsom has 30 days to decide whether or not to sign the bill, and then it takes effect the next day. And so if this bill passes by August 31st, then Governor Newsom would have another month to decide whether or not he wants to sign the bill. And the day that he signed the bill, the next day it would take effect. Now, as it pertains to his prospects, if I were a betting man, I would say it is more likely than not to pass in the next 12 to 13 days, or there's like a 2/3 or better chance. And the reason that is basically the reasons I was mentioning before. California is seeing all these other states come up with regulations, and it doesn't want to be left behind economically. There's a strong sort of public health contingent that is arguing for regulation, so consumers can be buying products that have the right amount of CBD in them. I think it would be really tragic, given all the benefits of CBD, if people started to think of it as snake oil because the products that were being sold weren't fully regulated. And this is also something the state has been discussing for a year and a half. And so we'll all see what shakes out over the next 10 to 12 days, but I know that right now there are conversations happening in Sacramento to try and hammer out the remaining details of this legislation, and hopefully it can pass soon. The final thing that I'll mention is just like next steps, right? So what happens if this passes? I think what happens if this passes is, one, you will start to see an explosion of the hemp CBD industry in California, right? Again, the channels through which hemp CBD can be sold are far less restricted. So you will start to see major retailers and grocers across California carry a lot of these goods. So I think that will be exciting. It'll open us up to a much bigger consumer base that wouldn't otherwise patronize dispensary. Two, you will start to see the economic benefits of that. And that's not only in terms of tax revenue, but you'll also start to see more and more people working in this industry, which will increase the economic force of the cannabis and the hemp industries. And in a state like California, which has the fifth biggest economy in the country, right? The more people you have working in your industry, the more sales you have, the more political clout that you have. And so I think that's something that's pretty important and exciting too. And then the final thing I'll say is that, you know, California moves mountains, right? So California, you know, again, is the fifth biggest economy. It's one of the biggest states out there. And so I think once you see a state like California pass its own regulations, you're going to see the FDA finally get its act together. And that's, again, because with all of these states taking action, you know, it's very hard to set up the economic infrastructure that we need to build a successful product, right? So in the United States, we rely on interstate commerce. That's how we move goods from where they're most efficiently produced to where there is highest demand. But if all of these states start to set up their own siloed frameworks with different testing standards and different labeling standards, then it'll be hard for this to become a national product. And so I'm very optimistic that this bill will pass, and it'll be good for the economy and good for the industry. And I think if it passes, we can hopefully finally expect to hear from the FDA relatively soon. So yeah, that's all I got.
Hirsch, awesome. Thank you so much. Literally smartest policy guy I know when it comes to cannabis. So really appreciate your insights there. So we'd love to open up to questions and answers from the crowd. Brett, if you would please turn on all the cameras, let everybody in, and let's see if we can get some little order going to the questions here. If possible, raise your hand on the chat window. Or if we got somebody that's ready with a question, let's go.
I can start one off. So for Hirsch, you know, right now the FDA technically considers CBD an adulterant, which is why people are not putting it into food. You're allowed to put it into topicals and other things. If California changes that and the FDA doesn't, do you still, I mean, obviously the big national brands are still waiting for the FDA to change before they'll start getting on shelves, right? So even if Walgreens, well, I mean, it's still questionable even whether Walgreens will stock this, right? Even if California allows it and the FDA doesn't.
Totally, yeah, it's a great question. What I would say is a few things. So first, it will, as you alluded to, John, it'll definitely like clearly still be federally illegal, right? So that will deter a number of actors. I do think it will come to resemble something similar to what we're experiencing in cannabis, where larger entities are starting to inch their toes in because they understand it's federally illegal, but illegal in name only. So that ambiguity will exist and will deter some players, but I think people will start to see how the trends are moving. The second thing I will say is we have talked to a number of national retailers that have kind of like distinct operations, and many of them are sort of setting up operations in those states that have passed regulations. So you may see some national retailers operate selectively there. A couple other things that I will also say, you know, while there'll be some hesitation about moving in, retailers also don't want to lose out, right? So if you just do a little Googling, you'll see that both Walmart and Pepsi, right, two major entities in the past couple of weeks have taken steps to participate in this space. And people will think to themselves, oh, if Walmart and Pepsi are doing this, then I want to do this as well. So I think, you know, human psychology is a funny thing, right? Nobody wants to be the first, but no one wants to lose out either. So I think you'll see those dynamics. And then the final thing I'll highlight is, and again, you know, if one does some Googling, you can see this out there. The FDA is now like finally really deciding and seeing that it has to move. So there have been at the Office of Management and Budget, there have been 9 meetings in the past 3 weeks between different hemp industry groups. And here I'm talking about Vote Hemp, right? Like all the major hemp trade associations. There have literally been 9 meetings in the past 3 weeks, which has been more meetings that have taken place in the previous 18 months. And so I think, and the FDA has already put out what they call draft regulations that they haven't released to the public and are seeking people's input on. So given how long it's taken the FDA, I hate to make predictions, but I really believe that we're almost there. We're almost there. And that 6 months from now, we'll be living in a world with far, far more clarity. So
great.
Yay.
Fantastic. Any questions for Elizabeth? our Director of Health and Wellness, or John, our special guest today.
I see Marie. You've always got a question. Hi, Marie.
Hey, you're on mute.
Kind of the same background. I truly, not to say yours wasn't, but very, very wonderful. And again, I tried to write down your email. It was info@holistic-care, C-A-R-E. I didn't get it all.
C-A-R-I-N-G, Caring, Holistic Caring.
C-A-R-I-N-G.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, John, you want to talk a little bit more about the dosing on your product? Because I remember it was like about a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1 THC CBD.
Sure. So it's, let's see if I can get this on camera here. Oh, it's reversed though. So it's 2 to 3 THC to CBD. So 2.5 milligrams THC to 3.7 CBD. The key to what we're doing is combining it with effective ingredients from the vitamin and supplements world. So as far as we know, this is the first product ever that's been combined with efficacious dosage of turmeric and probiotics. So we went through the world. My team is people from the vitamin and supplements world, and we went through a very long list of potential ingredients and landed on Lactobacillus acidophilus, which is a probiotic, and 95% curcuminoids, which is derived from turmeric. And those are two ingredients where there's a lot of evidence for efficacy through neuron signaling, inflammation, or immune system function. And what I like, what's most interesting, which you very rarely see, which was in your presentation, is the cross connections between the endocannabinoid system and other pain, inflammation, and immune system regulatory function. And so the crossovers between cannabinoids and NSAIDs and COX-2 inhibitors, and the crossover between gut barrier function and irritable bowel disease, Crohn's disease. There's a whole lot of emerging science that shows that you get an even greater amount of efficacy by combining multiple ingredients to hit the multiple pathways and mechanisms of action. So everything we've done is to design this to support the endocannabinoid system by bringing in those other ingredients.
Sounds like it's really well made, and I look forward to trying it myself. The gut health is probably the biggest issue with our overall health, and people don't realize how important that is. Gut health to mental health, gut health to immune function, and overall pain, as well as sleep and other wellness issues. So taking care of that gut and turmeric never hurts. So I really look forward to trying this myself.
Great. Yeah, get on our site. So we're launching in September, and if you want to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, listserv, we're talking to the initial launch dispensaries right now, and we'll let you know where you can pick it up.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. As an all-volunteer organization, all of us here at Los Angeles NORML can express how much your support means to us, really and truly. So please do consider making a financial contribution to Los Angeles NORML so that we can continue pushing forward on reforming cannabis laws within our community. Sharon's putting a link in the chat window now. And, you know, as I said, we're a completely volunteer organization. So your funds help keep the lights on, literally pay for this Zoom account, pay for some email, the website, you know, small little things, because everybody here volunteers their time to help push forward on this. So we really, really appreciate your support. As well, I'd like to mention, please come to visit our website, lanormal.org. Look around a little bit. We have recently launched our mission partner page. So this is where we're reaching out to the community, looking for supporters who are willing to help us push forward on reforming cannabis laws. So please do know that these mission partners are absolutely helping pushing us forward with that agenda. So please check out their websites and take a look and see if there's anything that they might be able to help you out with. As well, let's see, I think that might be about it. Like I said, really appreciate, our next meeting. We have our monthly public chapter meeting on the third Wednesday of every month at 4 o'clock. so we can kind of celebrate through that 420 hour. And our next meeting is going to be on September 16th. So please do stay tuned. Make sure you go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. We will let you know all the details of that next meeting. And really, thank you all for being here today.